Who?
To drink more.
We're live.
No.
Welcome. Yeah, we're late. Doesn't matter.
Well, we're not.
No, we're not. But I was going to ask you, John, because John Davidson, top Rugby League news journalist person. Top. You know,
Laughable.
You know all the. You hate Feb apparently, according to Dave. He's not listening. Dave, why are you not listening?
It was only a joke. I wasn't actually suggesting that I have right. It was only my warped sense of humour.
I for one will welcome.
That seemed to have triggered a lot of fat cappers.
I will welcome all. Do we have teams in the Super League next year?
We should get the Durka whatever.
Durka Devils.
Dervishes.
Yeah. If only they'd have built that cricket stadium there. But again, blame Leeds again. John and Davidson, they sound very Scottish. Are you sure you're not playing for the national football team?
Too many generations. Yeah, it's about 5 or 6.
So you've got more Scottish people in the Australian football team than are in the Scottish national rugby union team.
Probably, yeah.
Impressive. Not here to talk rugby union.
That wasn't the
tomorrow.
start I was expecting.
No, it's tomorrow.
Has it been a busy day? You're a bit warped, brain-wise.
I mean,
it's been like an Easter for journalists.
Yeah.
2 stories. Three
Yeah.
major stories in one.
When I put a tweet out saying the good
4 major stories.
4, possibly 4, the good and the bad of Easter. Well, we'll get to that
5.
later because 5.
I know that's what's going on.
Because let's talk about the Smiths. We'll not start with Leeds because everyone will switch off. Hull Kingston Rovers, Tony Smith, heavily linked with Leeds' job, is not the Smith who's signed the contract with Leeds because it's Rowan, but Tony Smith will not be at Hull Kingston Rovers next year. What's happened? Apart from he's obviously fallen out with someone higher in the club, I think.
Well, he's fallen out with the CEO, Paul Lakin. I think he inferred as much in his statement.
Other than actually naming him.
Yeah.
He couldn't have inferred it any more.
It is very interesting though, because there's been, shall we put murmurs about issues at the club, but on the face of it, they've just won back-to-back in over Easter. They're in the semi-final of the Challenge Cup, and Tony Smith's done an unbelievable job since taking over from Tim Sheens. And the club looks to be in a great direction. They're buying a stadium. They've got a lot of good young English players. Everything's positive, but there's a falling out there, and he's kind of effectively thrown them a bit under the bus because they had no idea that he was going to announce it.
I think that's the thing.
Shock.
If the club are prepared for it, and it's almost seen as a mutual announcement.
Well, these things are always managed, as you know, Phil. Yeah.
But you've got to the point where it's Tony interrupting his own press conference to say, I just want to say, I'm not going to be here from the end of the year.
And his daughter is the media manager, so he's blindsided his own daughter as well.
She may or may not have known.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, Tony is the sort of person that we saw it when he was coach of Great Britain, then England, that he wanted an input as director of rugby at the RFL into how the game moved forward. It wasn't just about how the team he was responsible for played. He wanted input into the whole philosophy of the organisation. And clearly, he has said as much today, he's not getting that input. And there is not a meeting of minds. He doesn't feel as though they're moving in the same direction that he wants to move in. And by getting his retaliation in first, he's taken the honourable position of saying, I'm not going to hold this club back. Is
that an honourable position, though? I think it really depends on which side of the fence you're looking at. If you're a fan, if you're a Hull KR fan, you kind of just go, what the hell's going on?
I think it puts a lot of pressure on the management of the club at the moment, that when he's not there next year, does it move ahead as smoothly as it seems to be doing at the moment?
Or will this season, which they're in a decent position at the moment, if it falls apart, the blame goes to the ownership and the
I think has happened, which I don't think there's necessarily any truth in this. But overnight in Australia...
I love that disclaimer.
Yes. Overnight in Australia, a story was run about Hull KR approaching Anthony Seibold for next year, whilst Tony Smith is supposedly about to be in negotiation.
What's the story? Apparently he was set to sign a new deal.
So, if you wake up this morning as Tony Smith and you hear that your position is being negotiated with somebody else for next year, then he has got his retaliation in first. He has said, that's a club that might be doing something behind my back. It's not people I want to work for. It goes along with a lot of other things that I'm not happy with the direction this club is going in. I'll undermine them talking to somebody else. I mean, we heard, and it was strenuous denial, we must say, that this was one of the issues with Sean Wayne leaving Wigan.
Yeah.
That Wigan were talking to people like Sean Edwards before Sean Wayne's tenure,
just on that,
which they denied.
Just on that, on the
if you're
Seabold
listening,
thing,
Chris Radlinski, I know you denied it.
Just on the Seabold thing, my understanding, and I could be very wrong, but I think it's very unlikely that
But-
he'll. And that may be just a case of Seabold's agent or Seabold himself
But the
planning
fact
that
that
with a certain
it's out in the
journalist.
public
Yeah,
arena
no, for sure.
and undermined.
There's always
Tony
power.
Smith.
There's always power. The other thing that you mentioned,
So
Great
when you
Britain
say,
and England.
is he honourable? I think in that respect, if he feels people have been talking
Yeah,
to
yeah.
somebody else before finalising their negotiations with the current incumbent, it is on. You can make a case for it being honourable.
Personally, I really like Tony. I think he's one of the best coaches to deal with, and he's got a fantastic track record. And his teams play entertaining rugby. The thing is also that you didn't mention that Warrington, which had an unbelievably successful tenure at Warrington. Obviously, a lot of finals, a lot of Challenge Cup wins.
Yep.
Unfortunately, couldn't get the chocolates in the grand final. But at the end, he did fall out with the players and he didn't have the control he wanted. It's kind of history, not with the players.
He was
but
there
history
for
of
9 years, which is a long
it
time
is,
for a
it
coach
is.
to be at a club.
But he was numero uno at that club.
But I think when you appoint Tony Smith, he doesn't have a subservient role.
Yes.
It's the Brian Clough type thing. If I come into Brian McDermott, if I come into your club, I'm going to tell you about every part of your club, the bits that work, the bits that don't, what we need to fix, how we need to treat people.
Don Revie.
Clearly, he is feeling that there are people at Hull KR at the moment who I don't think is Neil Hudgell, which is why the finger is pointed fairly and squarely at Paul Lakin, because who else is there? Is taking the club in a direction that he doesn't think it should go in. But he likes.
The thing is,
that
though,
influence.
on that, you'd have to say, if you look across professional sport generally, that model for most is kind of outdated. That's the 80s, 70s, whatever way of thinking that Sir Alec Ferguson.
Could be.
But
could be.
today it's, directors of rugby or sporting directors, and
Yep.
their job is too big, generally in most sports, at big clubs anyway.
But I also think, again, there was
Lee Centurions.
there was an obvious succession plan at Hull KR if they'd have wanted it, and that would have been Tony moving into that kind of director of rugby role. And we keep saying director of rugby. Nobody's ever defined what a director of rugby does.
I think
It differs at every club, doesn't it? Yeah.
But Danny Maguire could then have been brought through under Tony's wing, and you'd have had a head coach with the ear of a guy who clearly has had a massive influence on him as a player and now as a coach, and kept that structure together. It sounds as though that was not going to happen.
If you can't work with someone, in that senior
Exactly.
level day by day, then I just think the timing of it, the fact that he's blindsided the club is pretty amazing.
So the question now is,
Maybe very cunning.
do you think he'll be there to the end of the season?
Well, that's that's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, you'd have to look at his contract and whether is there a large payout? Yeah.
Well, he's at the end of his contract at the end of this year, so I don't think it'd be large. But
Yeah.
if it was mutually beneficial for both parties,
and also he's got no other job to go to that we know of.
no, I don't think he has at this
Yeah.
moment.
So it's a brave move.
Although, funnily enough, his nephew will be coaching in Super League next year. And the conspiracy
I was gonna say,
theorists are
look,
out there going,
And will he get much say at Leeds? Because I think we've gone through that many times on numerous podcasts, whether it be Mr. Hetherington, Mr. Sinfield, Mr. Ragar,
I'm just saying
Mr. McDermott. Yeah.
But no, I think Tony will revitalise any club he goes to. So I'm sure there will be somewhere that will be desperate for him to come in. I just think what he's done today is very much about. It's a
Preemptive strike?
Yeah, very much about putting him absolutely at the forefront of how this is going to play
Pearl
out.
Harbor.
And he's not going to be told, at the end of the season that perhaps the way the club wants to move is in a direction that he doesn't.
And the point that he's done, his stock is very high because he has done such a great job at Hull KR. And they're sitting very comfortably at the moment, as well as obviously last season.
But I think that Seabold story might have been the final straw.
Great parallels with a bloke who once resigned on the air once, but he's disgraced now, so you can't refer to him. But changes are being made that he doesn't agree with, potentially. So if Tony Smith's going, which he is, do you take the risk of appointing Danny Maguire? It's not as if they haven't done it before. Chris Chester was a coach with no experience when they appointed him, and he got them to a Challenge Cup final.
Well, this links in with who Leeds have appointed and the process that Leeds have gone through to even find somebody to appoint. So at the beginning of next season, Hull KR are going to need a coach, and if rumour, which I think is substantiated, is to be believed, St Helens are going to be looking for a coach as well.
That's exactly right.
I don't think it's anything to do with Christian Wolff has been offered another job. I think he is going back with his family after the World Cup. I think there will be an NRL job that will become available at a club where he would be the next cab off the rank. He's done the Justin Holbrook. He's taken on one of the
Even
top
more
teams
so.
here.
Yeah.
He's been incredibly successful. I think Tonga are going to have a great World Cup. If, let's say, Canterbury are looking for a coach, in the same way Gold Coast, one of the lower NRL
The Dragons,
teams that
the
are
Warriors,
changed,
West Tigers.
He's going to get the gig. So,
well, he's definitely.
he's going to be in
he's in
demand.
demand. Yeah.
So you're saying who will Hull KR get? Who will St Helens get? What pool could Leeds fish in?
Well, apparently they were going to get a big name because people wanted a big
Well,
name.
that's the
Where's the big
interesting.
name?
That's the interesting
Where is it?
thing.
Where
And
is
the
it?
thing is,
Where's
I
his
don't.
big name?
I mean, I think
I said
now,
Wayne Bennett. Where's Wayne Bennett?
now might be the time for, say, a Paul Wellens to step up at St Helens. But Paul Wellens has done the most incredible apprenticeship under 3 coaches. He may well be deemed to be ready and be exactly the right person.
Obviously.
I'm not sure Danny, by his own admission, is ready to take on being a head coach.
You mentioned Paul Wellens. Obviously, Kieran Cunningham had a fair apprenticeship, and
Yeah.
we all know how that worked out.
Yeah,
So
there's no
I guess
guarantee.
there is no guarantees. But just on Rich's point, the big name. I was talking to someone just before we came on air. Fairly,
Which is why we were late.
No, it was the traffic. Fairly powerful in the game, and they were suggesting that signing a coach from the North Devils, the Queensland Cup, to arguably, if not the biggest club, the top 2 or 3, resources, facilities, etc. Does that really show where Super League's at? Because
Yes.
if you look at the coaches that were linked to the Leeds job publicly, all of them, well, I'd say nearly all of them have better CVs than Rohan
But
Smith.
who was realistically linked?
Well, let me finish.
Yeah, when Sky put
Let
that
me
big
finish.
list
Phil.
up, they tell you
We
how
don't
many
know.
going.
Yeah. Well, I believe
Hampton,
Sky was
Scully.
saying, I believe Sky was saying Brian McDermott should get the job. That wasn't going to happen. But yeah, Shane Flanagan, he may not want the job. I don't think he wanted the job. Paul Green, but these coaches have won grand finals in the RL and have coached at the Sydney. Rohan Smith has never coached at the top level. He couldn't get Bradford promoted when they were full time in a part time league.
But I'm not sure that.
CVs are not everything, though.
And I'm not sure Paul Green. The fact that he hasn't been offered another NRL job since, the fact that Shane Flanagan is deemed to be almost keep a bit at arm's length because of everything that went on at Cronulla.
I think he's fairly rehabilitated in the eyes of
But
the
there
NRL
are a
now.
number of jobs he could have had, some quite recently.
I think there'll be some jobs opening up in the next 18 months.
There will.
He's got a lot of powerful friends in the Sydney media
Well,
who are already agitating against a certain Maguire.
But also, if they thought they could walk into an NRL job, they don't need to come over here for 2 years to prove themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Sean Wayne was linked with the job. I'm not sure it was ever realistic.
No, it seems unlikely to me, yeah.
So, again, forget who it is at the moment and what their credentials are. Where will Hull KR be fishing when it comes to replacing Tony Smith? And
Another Craig Sandercock. Or another Chris Chester. Or
James Webster.
James Ford. Because if we don't say James Ford, then people get upset that we haven't mentioned James Ford because he's the
You're
he's the
crept under
up-and-coming
the ladder in the championship up to 3rd. So.
he's the up-and-coming British coach de jour, as they say in France. Sylvain Houlez, the job. Steve McNamara,
But again, he was another name that was linked with the Leeds job, was never going to come to Leeds. But you had to be realistic. It's all very well being linked with people, but...
Well, I think there's a difference between a coach who is out of a job and one who's actually held discussions with the club and is a realistic appointment.
And if again, with the parlous financial state that every club is still in here, they are not going to pay to release somebody from a contract to actually get them in the first place. It was just never going to happen. So I mean, on the Rohan Smith thing, and people will quite rightly have an opinion based on what he did or didn't do at Bradford, bearing in mind that the biggest rug he was on was pulled out from under him in the financial parlour state of Bradford at the time.
I think that happened more towards the end of his tenure, but
I think the decision has been made by Gary Hetherington to almost look at where Leeds were when they got Tony Smith, who came from a Huddersfield club that had initially been relegated, and he hadn't established his reputation at that point. And I think, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Gary Hetherington, I think he could explain this himself. They're looking for somebody who isn't just going to develop players, but actually play in a different style, which Tony did when he came to Leeds. And I think all the word he's got back about Rohan is he's from a slightly different school, plays a slightly different way.
Do they need a different style? Do they need someone?
No, I think the British game does. I'm not sure Leeds do.
I don't think Leeds need to worry about the British game. They need to avoid relegation. I think personally, they need an experienced older coach who can kick some heads because.
But who is there?
Well, there are older coaches out there, more experienced. But I'm not saying a specific candidate. I'm just saying someone who can literally lay down the law, because to me that playing group is more than good enough to be in the top 6, if not the top 8.
But
they're not performing.
So if you can get somebody who can get them to perform in a style of rugby that they're enjoying playing,
it's a great success.
Do you need to crack heads? But again, nobody's going to know whether it's a great appointment until he's the proof of the pudding. But I think the template that Gary Hetherington has used is when Tony Smith arrived in 2004.
Is that the same template that appointed Dave Furner, gave Kevin Sinfield the job,
yes,
appointed
again,
Richard Agar, his close family friend?
According to Mr. Hetherington, Dave Furner was appointed by Kevin Sinfield.
There you go.
Oh, it's Kevin Sinfield's fault. Wow.
Sir Kev.
Okay.
Because he wasn't involved in the rugby department at the time. That's
convenient.
But you hear all of these arguments about who they need. But if that person isn't available because they're not on the market,
oh yeah,
what road do you then go down?
Well, yeah,
and it may well be that. I mean, I've noticed again. You could. There are people that will always talk up the incumbent because they've played under them, but somebody like Adrian Vowles immediately has tweeted from Australia that Rohan Smith is exactly the right person. So there will be people that are saying this is a smart appointment.
There's definitely advocates of Rohan Smith. There's lots of people. He's obviously had a long, he's Brian Smith's son. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he's grown up in the game. He's been an assistant.
Well, and he's also going to be working with Chev Walker and John Bastian, who were with him at Bradford, who speak very highly of him still.
But
so we shall see.
There's also a lot of people who say,
absolutely,
why did he not have Adam O'Brien in the 17 in the crucial game against Featherstone that they lost 20-0 that cost them a playoff spot?
They still want the Championship Shield, though, John. That's a real trophy.
Are the Leeds players going to be meditating on the field at Headingley like the Bradford players did?
That's going to be part of the excitement.
Is that going to work? Excitement is a very interesting word you use, Phil.
Well,
I don't know if a lot of Leeds fans are excited at the moment.
No, I'm told that one of the reasons he is the candidate, and more than that, has a 3.5-year deal. This isn't, you've got a deal for a year, let's see how it goes.
How long was David Furner's deal?
But 3.5 years.
I think it was 3 years.
But David Furner had more of a pedigree
at
NRL level.
He did, yeah.
So to give somebody who hasn't got that pedigree a 3.5-year deal, the feel within. And you can only say Gary Hetherington because he's the guy that's made this decision, is that...
I think Richard Agar's had some input.
Well, apparently...
He's been out in Australia.
He was on holiday in Australia.
No, he was out in Australia organising interviews. Let's not be silly.
So the interesting thing about all of that is that they feel he's got a development role with the talented young kids that are coming through, of which, if Easter Monday showed us anything, there are some talented young kids coming through. And he's got this... a bit like Uncle Tony, rather than Father Brian, philosophy about the way the game should be played. I think that's it. I think that's important for the British game. That there has to be an emphasis on attack, and I think that the era of wrestle, which hopefully we've moved away from, we're now seeing clubs like Wigan, even St Helens, who Christian Wolf prides himself on defence first. They're playing some wonderful attacking rugby.
I think they were doing that under Justin Holbrook.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
just defending
but
better and they've
I
become a
just
better
think
team.
we need to move away from.
Well, that's not going to work internationally, though.
Let's sort Super League out. We can't attract coaches. We can only attract players who've retired.
Is Greg Inglis coming back? Coming back for a stint?
I think Warrington have still got some shirts to sell.
Corey Norman. Wow, that's...
As if 2 stories weren't enough.
Wow. Teller, 55, says, Gary Hetherington's description of Rohan Smith sounds exactly the same as the description he gave when appointing Richard Agar. So they're doomed to fail already.
Well,
I don't know if that's exactly true. There
That's
are
what
different.
I think Richard Agar stepped into a breach.
Yeah. He was a stopgap solution who did reasonably well for a period.
Who actually,
stabilised the situation.
Yeah, and said he wasn't ever a reluctant coach. So all of this, it was the least worst option. He was at pains to say when he stepped down the other week that it wasn't. I'm not sure that's the same as going out and appointing a coach. Rather than go to... I think Gary Hetherington would admit that even if he won't take responsibility for the David Ferner one, but clearly he was involved in the process, that Dean Lance was probably the one he got wrong.
Adelaide Rams.
But what he did right was the initial appointment of Tony Smith. What he's also saying is nobody really was full of enthusiasm for Graham Murray when he first came here. That we'd sort of seen him as coach of Fiji in 1995 in the World Cup.
Very good coach in the NRL.
But he went back as an even better coach. It's not like when he was announced, everybody, they've got the great Graham Murray. It's like he became great.
I think that's, as you know, Phil, that's part of it. You can't please everyone.
No,
and these days you can rarely please anyone.
So I think the jury is clearly out on Rohan Smith.
Yeah, I mean, he may do a fantastic job. And
it's a left field appointment.
It's an unusual one.
And I think the one thing that we can credit them for is nobody had wind of this until minutes before it was properly announced. Yeah. Which in this day and age, with a club like Leeds, is a massive feat. Due to be here within the next 2 weeks, we'll see.
The JJB era continues, albeit temporarily. We'll talk about the games and how Leeds and others went on in a bit. Corey Norman then coming out of retirement to go to Toulouse. What's that all about?
Well, I think he's the story that I reread today, which I think was in December, was he'd fallen out of love with Rugby League, etc., etc. I mean, I don't know how much was that no one wanted him, or apparently had offers, but I mean, he strikes me, of what I've seen, like a very, very talented player. I mean, he's played State of Origin, I think he's kicked numerous, golden point field goals, but never really perhaps knuckled down and made the most of his talent, which was a lot. And I had a lot of off-field issues. Maybe it's an attitude thing, maybe it's an ego thing, whatever. So it can go one of 2 ways. I'm probably going to go on a little bit of a limb and say it's probably not going to work in the way that Toulouse want, but I could be wrong.
It could be enough.
I'm often them wrong.
To get them out of relegation.
One player? I don't think one player will be enough.
No, but I think when you've lost Jonathan Ford and Mark Carilla, getting Corey Norman is an option.
The funny thing about that, Phil, is though, they had all the off-season to sign these players. They didn't do it. They kind of said, no, we don't want to go down the route. Obviously, they had the 2 anti-vaxxers pull out, which was, unexpected, unfortunate, heartbreaking for them, the club, I mean, not the players. But they've only really dipped into the market now when the excrement's starting to hit the fan.
But then you can.
So is that a little too late?
No, because it's only 8 rounds in. But I think if you've got a half-back partnership of Tony Gigo and Corey Norman, you are going to trouble some teams.
I don't think it's necessarily.
And they don't need
about
to
troubling
win.
teams.
They don't need to win every game. They just need to win enough
More than
games
Leeds.
of the teams around them.
Leeds aren't getting relegated.
Salford and Wakefield.
Leeds are not going to finish bottom.
I think we were talking about a coach at Leeds, so they're going to get a half-back and a full-back, Phil.
No, they've only named 20 players.
The spine's
so
fairly important.
Well, they've got room in that squad to sign Zakane, can they?
That ain't going to happen.
Don't think they've got room in the salary cap, Rich.
More likely to take Joey Leilua on loan from Featherstone this week.
When's Luke Briscoe back? Come on, he's coming back. He's got to be coming back.
Can play anywhere.
The Dick Whittington of Leeds. So in short, we're not still. Corey Norman's going to Toulouse. We'll see what happens.
He's an exciting player. It's a good signing for Super League, I think.
It's a good signing, I think, for Toulouse, considering the the players that are available
He's
in their
somebody,
situation.
he's somebody you'll
But-
want to go and watch in his
And
opening game.
what's he been doing in the last 6 months? Has
Well,
he been,
that's the thing.
you know, sitting at Bondi, you know, knocking back vodka
That is
cruises
the
with
He's going to need severely looking after by his teammates in terms of protection on the field, because he's not going to be match fit to start with. But he's exciting. He's someone we'll talk about.
talented,
He's
yeah.
the kind of player who people may pay to go and see, or a broadcaster may want to have on their screen. So in that respect, I think it's
He's not Andrew Johnsville, come on.
No, but he's not Greg Inglis either.
Well, at least to Corey Norman's credit, he's only... Well, he's not in his late 30s or mid 30s, as I understand it. And he's
not been out the
he's
game
only
for
been
18
retired
months,
exactly. Well,
you know.
Greg Inglis was always, you know... Yeah.
In terms of his contribution when he gets here,
He should
I think
make
it
a
should
greater
be quicker
contribution,
and
definitely. Yeah.
And you know, I applaud Toulouse for finding him, because you know he's a name again that has
I think
not
he was
been
in
linked.
Sydney. He wasn't, you know.
No, but I mean,
he wasn't in Ukraine getting shelled.
But that he would fit in most Super League teams if they knew he was available.
See, that's the key word, and I think a lot of people overlook this. He would fit in terms of his talent, but does he fit in terms of the dynamic, in terms of his attitudes?
That's
I think a lot of clubs would go, and most probably then have gone, carries on a bit like a dickhead. We don't want him. Great player. And that's what you see.
Well,
those players tend to make it over to Super
That must be a
League.
low bar in the NRL, because they all behave like that.
Either the French lifestyle will be perfect for him, or
Well, Catalans is
or
usually...
the worst thing that could happen to him.
Usually a Catalan's perfect sign isn't under the, you know, Todd Carney.
But I'm excited to see
Israel.
him play when he comes over. See what kind of a state he's in, what sort of influence he can have, and whether he can be the kind of excitement machine that we'll all be going, this is great for
I
the
think they
competition.
need a couple, at least
Oh,
two
I'm
more
sure they do.
players.
No, I'm absolutely sure they
if
do.
not more. And you know, I think soon, because to me, you know, I was at Huddersfield and St Helens. I mean, obviously we'll talk about the Lewis Dodd situation, because I think that's a massive blow. But St Helens are so far in front of everyone
Absolutely.
else. The relegation battle is much more exciting. Sorry, Phil. You know, than pretty much anywhere else.
I'll be reporting on it, so that's fine.
You'll be in the championship next season.
20 years ago, Warrington nearly got relegated.
Well, the way they're going, you wouldn't rule it out.
I think if you take St Helens out of it, because they are so good, and we're going to see how good their reserves are this Friday at Castleford
Yeah.
or Academy. And if you look at the moment that Catalan have got something, because the momentum of last year does seem to have been taken into this year. If you acknowledge that Wigan seem to have two players who are real X Factor players, that makes them
They're great to
something
watch.
a little bit special. Everybody else is pretty much of a muchness.
Average, yeah. Yeah.
So I do think
I
that
would
to
say-
throw Corey Norman into that mix is interesting.
Yeah, I think there is a massive middle ground. Although I will say, very impressed with Huddersfield, even though they rested a lot of players against St Helens. They're much improved.
Yeah, 100%.
And definitely deserve to be in that sort of top
much
four.
harder to beat, which I think is what Ian
Yeah.
Watson wants from his team.
Is that the benefit of putting a coach in charge, giving him a year to settle in, and then?
Well, yeah, I
leave
think
the
giving him
fruits of it the year
time
afterwards?
to build his own squad, to make the changes he wants, to
But I
try and change the culture. And I think
But he's
Process,
done that under the radar, because it's a club that you can do that under the radar, whereas you can't at Leeds, you can't at Warrington. Every minute of every match you have to not only win, but you have to play a certain way. There's a level of expectation because of the numbers of people that you attract into the stadium, and you don't have
In
that
saying
at
that,
Huddersfield.
he was a proven coach. The resources he had at Salford, possibly the lowest,
Absolutely.
and he managed to get them to a grand final.
And he's turning. He's going to. Huddersfield are very close to getting to a Challenge Cup final in his second year there. So he clearly has a formula that works. But what he's had is a year to try and bring that into a new club with no pressure on him, because they didn't have to make the eight. It wasn't going to be a disaster if they didn't get to the playoffs.
Time is a commodity that not many people get in sport.
Absolutely. But if you give it to people like Ian Watson, he'll deliver.
Very thankful to the Smiths today, because if it wasn't, we'd be talking about Ryan Hall saying Easter's bad because they play 2 games, which is right, and Darryl Powell saying video referees shouldn't have to guess based on what a referee's guess is, which is also right. But we've made those points for the last, how long? Ever.
I think this will be the last double Easter.
Well, it was supposed to be, wasn't it? And the World Cup got postponed and COVID. And
Yeah, but you
everything,
didn't
so-
have to have 27 rounds this year.
Well,
that was the mistake.
no,
they
you've got-
should have had 25.
The only people who want Easter as it is are the people who run the clubs in terms of getting a home fixture.
But when-
they don't play half the games on Good Friday anyway. So.
But then when it comes round to the fixtures this weekend, and less fans are going because the quality is
It's going to be
compromised,
rubbish. Yeah.
will those owners be saying, why didn't you turn up and watch my game this week?
Wasn't the majority of the games on Monday fairly average?
They always are.
Yeah.
But I suspect now that, clearly Christian Wolff has picked a team for this week that is reflective of the Easter period and what they've got to come. Ryan Hall has come out and said it. Steve McNamara has come out and said it. I don't think we will... There's not a lot of point debating these two games over Easter because it's not going to happen anymore. I also think that the NRL got it absolutely right this weekend. If you've got a holiday weekend and you can put a top-class game on every day across 3 or 4 days, it adds interest. So by the time we got to Parramatta and West, which was a fantastic game, not only was the stadium full,
Great Britain's.
but like you're...
That's nice.
Hastings, yeah.
Well, he will win out, Lewis Dodds.
Do you think Sean Wayne will pick him?
Yeah, well, what option?
I don't think he's at-
What option has he got?
I don't think his accent
Does it-
fits the bill.
Does he want to get to the semi-finals of the World Cup?
Well, I think you worry about beating Samoa.
Wants to win it.
It's when the Johns brothers come in and
the way
Samoa get the best team that they
if
can.
you were going to pick the team this weekend, Jackson Hastings would have to be in it.
Well, I think Sean Wayne's already said publicly he
Well-
wants English-born
Well,
players.
You're either eligible or you're not, and that's just cutting off your
In
nose
your-
to spite your face.
Well, he is the coach, Phil.
Yeah.
And it's a good job he's
Well,
not
somebody
picking-
needs to have a quiet word and say we actually,
Are you
understand.
going to tell him, Phil?
Understand why, but we'd quite like to get to
Next
Arsenal
time we're on
with
Zoom with
80,000
it.
people
Next time we're on
tomorrow
Zoom,
morning.
we'll
I think they should
Right.
probably focus on beating the Combined Nations All-Stars after 50 players had dropped out first because
Well, again,
they struggled on that account. So
but there's going to be, by the time we get to that, people are going to be saying, "Oh, we're overplaying our players," and
Jake,
But we have an international weekend though this year, which is a nice return. Yeah,
we do.
Jake, are going to play for the Combined Nations All-Stars again?
probably. I don't see him playing for
He's got
England.
any Scottish in.
It is a shame that Joe Field's not eligible for Ireland.
Yes,
He's a great
although,
grandparent, not a. Although Nathan didn't stop Nathan being playing for New
Is he
Zealand.
married? Is he
or
married?
Tony Cascarino.
Can he
playing
marry someone like Connie Winfield Hiddleston?
I
staying in
don't-
the squad?
I don't think. Yeah,
Marriage
that's
of
not because
convenience.
she's married. That's residency rich. You
Well,
can't-
Danica wrote in the columns, it must be right. She won't-
Yeah,
No,
no.
she wrote residency as well.
Um,
So it's a good job that Sean Wayne's not in charge of the women because she won't be in.
I think you just got to go with the best that you've got available that is eligible to get. We need 80,000 people at the Emirates Stadium for England in a semi-final. Ideally against Tonga in a repeat of that fantastic game in the 2017 semi-final with Australia and New Zealand playing each other. And then hopefully an England men's team at Old Trafford. If they got that far, nobody would give a toss whether
I'm just-
Jackson Hastings was
Oh no, I agree with you 100%.
Oh.
But not to overplay it though. If you look at the seemingly close relationship that Matty Johns has with Jerome Luai and Brian Toto, and these players that said, your Josh Papalis have said we won't play for Samoa again if Matt Parrish the coach. Matt Parrish goes, they get the best Samoan eligible
Absolutely.
players.
Yeah, but
they have more talent than anyone, probably par Australia.
England would
And that-
still get through that group even if they lost that game.
Oh yeah, they
So
still finished
the route
second.
would be slightly different.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I just think it would be it would essentially be a dampener if they lost the Open.
on the one hand, we can't fake Luke Keary might be available to play for Ireland, and then say, but we don't want Jackson Hastings playing for England. It's like,
Well, there is
we
that.
just want the best players,
There is that.
whoever they are eligible.
There is
for.
that double standard. But
Yeah.
I think definitely if you are, even New Zealand, but definitely Australia, you
If
don't
Victor
you don't need to stockpile certain
No,
players.
but if
or-
Victor
yeah.
Radley isn't picked by Australia and says, I am available to play in the World Cup, England should be biting his
That's
hand
from
off.
Sheffield.
Biting his
Yeah.
hand off.
Sheffield's
not-
too far south. That's
He's not going to be playing for Australia unless Cam Murray, Isaiah Yeo, Jake Trbojevic are all
Absolutely.
injured. Dale Finucane. Yeah.
No one cares about how many foreigners are in the England rugby union team, do they? And that's full of
Or cricket, or any other sport.
Cricket's full of South Africa.
You're either eligible
We're only
or
good
you're
when we've
not.
got South African team.
Bring
And
back Tony Gregg.
Make them grovel. Yeah, that worked, Tony.
Now,
Well done.
if you can name a better England winger than Blake Austin, no, don't worry. Joking. But no, I think Dodd's injury, which is what prompted this conversation about Jackson Hastings,
we were a bit
is the
around.
most, it's the cruelest blow for not only St Helens and their, because I thought he was playing magnificently this year.
Yeah.
But it raises a huge question: who is your England halfback pair? Because again, George Williams for me has still got it all to do to prove
It's
that.
been terrible form.
Yep.
You couldn't pick him on form at the moment.
Dodd was the incumbent.
Johnny Lomax is in outstanding form. You
But
think
Lomax
he's got that
and Dodd,
jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they
was a
have the
perfect
partnership.
combination.
Yeah.
So if he, to me, Hastings is the natural replacement.
Gareth Widdop.
Not in the. He's not. I don't think he's even in Sean Wayne's squad, is he at the moment?
Look, Gale will be fresh because he'll have missed 7 games.
Jake
by the
Jake
time.
Truman clearly, I think, again needs
terrible
to
form.
up his game
Yeah.
to be included.
I don't. Yeah.
I know he's in line for a big transfer move at the end of the season, but it missed most of last year. Understand injuries are such a vital part; they take a long time to come back truly from. But is he going to be ready to play in a World Cup in 6 months' time? I haven't seen it yet.
No, I don't think so.
So it's a cruel injury for England
It is massive.
as well as clearly.
I think it's a huge, and I think it is an interesting question for St Helens because they don't have another half ready to go. I mean, I think what I saw on Monday, I mean, Jack Wellesby was essentially at fullback was taking most of the kicks, running the last tackle options.
He's going to have to do all of that this week because
James Roby at 7.
It's him.
James Roby at 7. As great as James Roby is, he's not a 7.
Would you play Lussick at 7 ahead of Roby if you're going to have to play both?
I'd put Wellesby at 7 and Will Hopewadi or another player at fullback. Tommy Makinson, Benison. Benison is a fullback. Hopewadi will be coming back. He's played most of his career at fullback. He's international in the NRL. Wellesby is that good. Probably play him in the front row.
Yeah.
He's got that combination. But Roby, I mean, I'll be shocked if they could persist with Roby at 7 playing 80 minutes week in, week out, because their attack, while they were tired on Monday, it was very clunky for St Helens, who are usually so fluid.
I think the thing about Dodd as well is, apart from his elusiveness, it's pace. We haven't got somebody
his kicking game, his pace.
But more than anything, it's pace.
Mm.
And I think we've seen that with some of the tries he scored this season. His ability to not just see the gap, but have the speed and the size to
chip and
get
chase.
through it.
Yeah.
There aren't too many players that
Dare I
can do
say
that.
it, either Scully-esque.
No, don't say it.
No, but he can
He's not got
tackle.
the tackle.
He can tackle. Yeah.
Right.
And he doesn't need shoulder.
Or his socks by his ankles.
Carson's asked, who will be the next Hull KR coach? We don't know. Probably Danny McGuire.
No, I think we've said that. We don't even know what pool they'll be fishing.
I think Danny Maguire is. I don't think that's locked in, but I think he's a good chance.
I mean, it's a bit rude of Carson. He said, "Good evening, gents and John." I mean, it's Australian. They're cultured these days.
Can't trust these Germans.
You know, they've got,
I mean, again, there is a
When they're on the warpath.
There's a debate to be had about
it's not even German.
the merit or otherwise of relegation from a playing point of view and a club development point of view. You can throw into that coach development. If there was no relegation, you would make Danny Maguire your coach. And you'd say to him, doesn't matter what happens for a couple of years, even if we have to go backwards to go forwards, learn your trade. But we won't. Now, what club would take a risk if it might mean the club getting relegated? That's why it's hard to know what the answer is. I'd love Danny to get the job. But Danny was on Sky the other week saying he's not ready for a head coach's job. He's learning his trade. Well, you stick him, under the spotlight and a weight of expectation and a potential factor of relegation, which is not to say Hull KR would be anywhere near being relegated under him, but it's still a risk that has to be mitigated as a business.
And as Bradford found in 2016, bringing over someone from Australia who doesn't know the local game or about to throw a relegation doesn't always work. So
with the way that Featherstone and Lee have gone about their business this year, which is exactly the same that Toulouse did and Toronto before them, there's no guarantee if you do get relegated, you are going to come straight back. It's not like what Fulham have just done in football.
There's
They'll
also
get relegated again next year. So
Yeah.
there's also I was going to say there's also a fair guarantee that you will get promoted and then relegated immediately.
Yeah.
All that money will be wasted, but yeah. Anyway.
Having referenced Argentinian football with the two halves of the NRLW season this year, where we've had the Apertura and we're now looking forward to the Closera, Andy says we should have biennial relegation. So, like, it's an average over 2 years of things.
I think
Confusing things. But yeah,
we haven't mentioned it yet. But in the
Mergers.
current 4020 magazine, there is a piece about the state of the game in 1971 and 1997, and the reports that were written at the time about what the game needed to do to move forward. The issues that are being discussed by the current strategic working group are exactly the same. We know what the problems are with the sport. We know what the issues are that we have to address and face up to. It's whether we want to or not. Now, whether in the future that's going to be somebody with a wodge of cash going, unless you do it, you can't have this, then that might be the answer. But we know that we've got to look at promotion relegation as a concept. We know that we've got to look at the amount of resource that we have in terms of playing standard. You know, with what Featherstone and Lee are doing at the moment, which you cannot fault from those clubs' point of view. We've got players playing in the Championship who are clearly good enough to be playing in Super League. That doesn't happen in any other sport.
Can you tell me? And also, I mean, just on that, why is there no quota in the Championship?
because they're not supposed to be signing all these foreign people.
No, but that's what is the point?
I
don't. And also, what is the point of having the same salary cap, the Super League, when you are literally playing against part-timers?
That's Toronto, isn't it?
So they shifted the goalpost for one
yeah.
club, who then went bust. Because I mean, is this some sort of weird Monty Python-esque joke?
But again,
like
what we've been saying.
Am I in Bizarro world?
No, but what we're saying is nothing is happening that we haven't come across as an issue before.
Yeah, but it just keeps repeating,
Yeah.
repeating.
So we know what the questions are. We've got some idea what the solutions could be. Nobody addresses.
I mean, at least we finally answered the question about summer rugby, which was in every programme every couple of years until 1995. So, you know, at least...
I thought Sky insisted on it.
Is it Eddie? It was Eddie. But which Eddie?
It's Rupert.
Teddy Ruxpin says, sorry for being late. It's okay. What has happened to the restructure and or major changes, 2 times tenders, etc.? Gone very quiet. What's what the steering group's concerned? Steering group.
And part of that is going to be whoever they are partnering with, which we believe will be an offshoot of IMG, will have their own ideas as well. And I think if club chair people propose something, it's too easy to vote against it. If you say, club chair people, do you agree that these people are the right people to give us a report on where we need to go? And they come back and say it, it's very hard to vote against it. But as you're reading there, John Cain did in 71 and Framing the Future did in 94 and then again in 97, and we didn't take all the recommendations on board.
The only magazine which will reference the Golden Shot this month.
And Charlie Williams.
And Charlie Williams, who won't be presenting the Rugby League on Channel 4, sadly, because he's no longer with us. But, you know, he'd probably do a better job than some people on some TV channels. Barnsley's finest.
Wrote his autobiography, came and did a signing in our shop.
Is there anyone Phil hasn't, mate? That's the big question. Briefly once, of course, I used to write press releases on things and sent them out to people to not get printed. Which leads me to, why did the Bradford Bulls release that statement to the fans? Because I always think these things, A, it looked terrible, but B, it's just pandering to a set of fans who are never going to be happy anyway, and everyone else is just pointing and laughing because it's hilarious.
The
best part of it is the replies to the to the tweet.
Featherstone Rovers, Super Fev, have gone 2 feet in.
Trolled them.
They've gone Luke Gale style in on them. Bradford Bulls are Johnny Lomax, Featherstone Rovers are Luke Gale, and they'll probably win on Monday anyway, so it doesn't matter. But statements like that, I just don't. I don't. It's like when people say, "Oh, they should give the fans their money back for going and we lost 100-0." Well, tough. That's sport. It happens.
It's like the dreaded vote of confidence.
Let me look at the league.
Everything's fine. Honestly, it's fine. By the way, you've been sacked tomorrow.
I don't know anything about
Don't
rugby
say
league.
anything.
But that statement, I mean, to not attribute a name to it, I mean, I do feel somewhat for the Bradford Bulls fans because in terms of rugby league, no one's had it worse in the last 12 years, particularly for those who put a lot of money and essentially it got pissed up on the wall, or against the wall, however you like to put it. But yeah, it just seems to be the same old story there, doesn't it? I mean,
Jimmy Peacock may as well have sold, bloody burnt his shirts or something for all the good it did. Melted his medals down. If you look at the championship table, the top 2 teams in the championship now, I could have told you were going to be the top 2 teams in the championship, and I don't know anything. So why Bradford decided to claim they were going to be in a promotion push this year, when in reality, is anyone going to challenge for the Snow League? And the answer,
I think it's
49% yes for fair, 49% league, 2% just in case Leicester City turn up.
I think
But otherwise,
it's because Bradford are outside the playoff spots, but again, only on points.
but look,
if they're in the playoffs, it
points
doesn't matter, they're not going to win.
they spend more than Barrow, they spend more than
Yeah.
Batley, they spend more than Sheffield, they probably spend more than Widnes,
Yeah.
they may spend more than Halifax. So
No, they're underperforming.
yeah,
Clearly.
yeah, but they haven't progressed in the last 3 years. I think is it 5th, 6th, and 5th, or
I think
Yeah.
the bigger concern is that less people are going to watch them on a regular basis. So there might be a one-off crowd of 5,800 against Halifax on Easter Monday. It's a local derby. That's going to be one of your big sellers of the season. The worry for Bradford would be you get 3/4 of the way through the season, you're at home to Newcastle and there's only 1,100 people there. Then all of the sums that you've done throughout the year to be commercially viable are not adding up.
it's not surprising
No.
that people aren't turning up when they've been lied to, what they've been through, false promises,
And-
false dawns.
And whether they, again, you've got to manage.
I can't fault them.
Got to manage the club prudently, but when they see divisional rivals signing players they deem to be higher profile than the ones that their club is signing.
And the answer for them seems to be just setting up another friend of the Bulls squad builder, essentially to try and
Squeeze
squeeze
so
yeah,
much money out of it.
exactly.
Or
yeah,
another
I mean,
dual registration agreement in the hope that the Super League clubs they've registered with haven't got too many injured players and can loan them some. Because they're not going to be getting any from Leeds.
I think the fans want some honesty, some realism,
But also the cost has to match the reality, and
Well, that's it. They are a championship club, and they have been for how many years now?
I think again too much focus is on if they get back to the Super League, they'll have at least 10,000 fans. Like that's not even
Don't think
given
that's-
anymore. Anymore.
No.
It's looking at Bradford through the prism of 10 good years or whatever, and ignoring the rest of the history of rugby league in Bradford over 150 years or whatever.
This is the third incarnation of a team called Bradford.
And it's not my anti-Bradford nature, it's just
False.
actual reality. But it
Yeah.
does go to prove that all those people who wrote those Bradford the back articles after they beat Leeds in the Cup were writing utter nonsense. Because they were. Because you can't take one result and they lost to Halifax the week after. Fair play to Halifax, by the way, playing pretty much the whole game with 12 men and won. So, well done, Halifax. But I don't know what Bradford can do to change anything, because they're like, Odsal is as it is. That's not going to change. They're not going to change that into some super stadium. That ship has been and sailed long ago.
I think
So
the
they're hamstrung
shame,
by that.
part of the shame is that you're looking at what Hull KR are doing now and lauding it. Some of that is on the back of taking a core of some very good Bradford youngsters.
It is, yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
The Matty Staughtons and
Rowan
Elliot
Mills.
Minchellas, Rowan Mills, Ethan Ryan. If they were still at Bradford, or Bradford were building a team around those sort of players, they'd be higher up the championship table. So I think there isn't really a junior coming through at the moment who's being coveted by other clubs. That's part of the issue.
But obviously they've got injuries, but every team's got injuries. So it's not... The issues with Bradford aren't just based on what's on the field. They haven't been for a long time.
Their half-back pairing of Deck Patton and Jordan Lilly should be virtually as good as anything in that
Should be,
division.
yeah. I think the change would be whether the head coach goes or is relieved of his duties.
But again, who do you get? Because our conversation
Rohan Smith
tonight has been
Keegan.
circulatory. That what pool do you fish in for coaches at the moment? The easiest thing to say, I get rid of the coach.
No,
Who are you going to replace?
He has,
him
and obviously John Keir's got a fantastic CV and won a lot, but he has been there, I think, 3 years or maybe longer. They haven't really progressed past the point.
But again,
so you do have to judge him on his performances.
But it's a financial thing as well, because
of course it is,
you can't just terminate contracts these days. It's not quite that easy. But who would they get? So far, it's got to get. Who would they get?
There's coaches out there, Phil. I'm sure there's lots who would put their hand up.
But you've got to get somebody who...
Jeff Toomey's unemployed.
stood on the...
Bring back Tooves.
He's gone to the National Media Museum.
Stood on the grassy knoll with his binoculars. I'm not the coach.
On holiday. Leave him alone.
Oh dear! But don't send out statements like that. Just
No,
don't.
I don't think that
It's
helps.
so counterproductive.
It doesn't
I
help.
just,
In fact, it ratchets up the pressure. And they've got Featherstone this week on television, which is,
Fev have got more players than they know what to do. They could set up a feeder team, could Fev?
Leeds.
Well, they are going to. They're going to be sending them to Leeds. But the thing about that is they could be embarrassed on Premier. They may well win, but it could show the gulf between where Bradford actually are and where they hope they might have been. And when you put out a statement like that, it almost paints you into a cul-de-sac.
Here's Lewis lobbing a grenade into things. What's the chance of mergers happening when 2 leagues of 10 happen? For example, Oldham, Swinton and Rochdale joining together. Is 2-10 just completely off now for the team? Because when we spoke to Simon Johnson last year, it was hinted about, wasn't it? That seemed to be the way we were going, but now it's not happening. So.
I think there's no chance of mergers.
We don't know what's going to happen next.
I think people would rather their clubs to die than merge. I think that's
I don't
even if it makes good sense, it won't happen.
I don't think it's an issue about merge. It's an issue about what do you want your sport to look like, and without ever capping anybody's ambition, what do you want your elite competition to be, and geographically, what do you want it to be, and that makes some decisions then about the current teams that are in existing competition. I think you look back at the Challenge Cup, and why was it a success? It's because Cumbria got an occasional visit from 2 great teams, and loads of people turned up. They wanted to be part of it. The amateur game in the area moved fixtures so that everybody could go. Everyone knew that Whitehaven weren't going to be St Helens, but that was a big event game, and that doesn't mean that you're denying Whitehaven the chance to ever be in Super League. It doesn't mean that you're saying teams in Cumbria should merge. It's just you need to come up with something where everyone gets something out of whatever structure you come up with. We've never addressed that.
We did kick Chorley and Nottingham and whoever else.
And we've let and Cornwall are in, and again watching a couple of their games on our league. It's a long haul. So what is the plan for a club like Cornwall? They're putting a toe in some sand, but what's the plan?
I don't know. I haven't heard one, Phil.
Is
there a plan for League One? Is there a plan
the sport
for...
needs a plan. What Midlands Hurricanes appear to be doing, the pictures that we seem to get back from their game.
The food looks great.
Yeah, with the craft beer. And
I don't know about the team, but
that's what you've got to sell people on, isn't it? And this is
exactly
this is the big test for Eric Perez down at Cornwall. At Toronto, he had it easy because they had the best squad in their division. They were always going to walk it. I know they dropped a point at Keighley or whatever, but they walked that division.
Yeah.
They walked the championship the second time in the end, although they were walking it the first year as well. But at Cornwall, you're starting with a team who are not doing that. They are not full of stars. They are.
Well, you've stated your ambition is not to be competitive in the sense of getting promotion. You
can't be competitive when you field a team of people who've never played rugby league. I think me and Rich might have a chance.
But at the same time, when Cornwall are put into the division, people like Eric Perez are saying, and in 7 years we'll be in Super. And you just go, look.
I think his same comment was that Super League was going to be bigger than the NRL. And that
how are you going to achieve that? Because unless there is a plan and how you fit into that plan and what resource you can bring to that plan, you are talking. Fulham came into the game 42 years ago. We're arguably going backwards in London at the moment. Why is Cornwall going to be the answer?
But
I'm not saying it isn't,
before
and I'm
anyone-
not saying we shouldn't have a team there,
Yeah.
but what is the overall plan for the sport, and where does Cornwall fit into it, and where do Whitehaven fit into it, and how do Bradford fit into it, and those are the questions that the strategic working group have got to come up with answers to, as there were in 71 and 97. Honestly, history is repeating itself, and we get to this point every time where we need to make some decisions, and we don't, we pull back.
The future.
So it's not about mergers. The future's in the past.
The future is the women, because it is. Semi-finals this week.
It's the children.
Well, no, not the children. The women. Mind you, some of the Super League teams are full of women's Super League teams are full of children when they're able to play when they're old enough. What a super bumper day of rugby league it is on Sunday, because you've got 1 o'clock Wigan versus Salford on Channel 4, 3 o'clock Oldham Cornwall on our league, and at 6:45 Hull FC versus Catalans. And in between those, you've got the two women's semi-finals, St Helens versus Fev, which everyone expects St Helens to win, and I'm sure they will, and York versus Leeds, which is a fascinating game. If I say Leeds will win, then someone will tell someone at York, and they will all be on the group chat, and then they'll all dislike this video. But that's allegedly.
But Sophie Robinson presumably isn't playing, as she'll be in
Well, I mean,
the Bahamas,
I keep a close eye on
playing
her
for Jamaica.
Instagram feed of food. I don't know how she eats all that food and remains an international
athlete.
rugby league player, but
No, it's 2:30 kick-off York and Leeds on the BBC
red eye button.
or Sky Channel 981 or whatever it is. If you got the chance to watch it.
Just a bit of breaking news.
Oh.
Wigan hooker Sam Powell has been given a 6-match ban for his crusher tackle.
He's lucky.
In the other high-profile hearing, Hull forward Brad Fash was cleared of an allegation of biting due to insufficient evidence.
I thought that he was playing on Monday as if he knew he was going to get banned. He was so
Great hair though. He got great hair.
I mean, I can't.
Well, there was air quotes. There was air quotes there.
I thought we'd gone back to 1972 then.
I can't speak.
I'm envious.
He's an extra from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but 6 games. Probably about right.
I think he's lucky.
I had a quick look the other day at Crush's general bans. I think that's about right. Usually they seem to be 6. But it was very ugly, and luckily the I think it was a
Full credit to John Bennison, who jumped straight up, didn't milk it.
I don't think you. I don't think there was any worry about milking it. It's just lucky that he wasn't injured. But yeah, that was horrific, and how he didn't get a red card, I don't know. So considering you could sneeze a few weeks ago.
He's out of the semi-final.
Yeah.
Would probably be out of the final if we can.
It's all bunched up this year, isn't it? I've forgotten. It's within 3 weeks after the semis of the thing. But yeah, watch the women's semis if you can.
Yes.
Watch
York and Leeds.
York and Leeds, that should be a really good game. And Feb have got some good players in their squad, as mentioned. I don't know how Brogan Cherm's not in the England squad. I don't know. I don't think there's any other player.
Maybe she'll get called up after she takes the St Helens pack apart.
No, she'll get signed by St Helens if she did that.
That's what I mean. That's what I'll get in the England team.
Now people are going to think we're anti-St Helens.
No, we're not.
I told you before, we're anti-Huddersfield. And Bradford. And Cass.
And Salford.
And Salford. Oh, yeah, Salford. Jeff says, Agar and Warrington. Oh, yeah, we definitely hate Warrington. Agar stabilised Leeds, says Jeff, by sending them into free fall. That was a bit harsh. And Hetherington only wants glove puppets coaching the team. Hello, I'm Rohan Smith.
I think they were in free fall before he got the job.
I think he stopped them in.
They're further in crisis.
Yeah.
Some people online are saying you're in crisis, Dave. Is there any other news before we talk about what happened on the pitch?
Any other news?
Because usually I know.
I'm sure there is actually. I just can't think of.
I don't know.
I can't think of it.
And I do enjoy it when you're all chatting on the chat. It's always good. I'm glad you're. We'll try and do it live more often. Just things get in the way. I'm interviewing a rugby union player.
The NRL are considering going to America.
Oh yeah.
That's never been done before.
No.
Because Peter Valandis has said the
holiday?
market's saturated in Australia.
Yeah. No teams in South Australia, no teams in Western Australia, no team in Tasmania, no team in Northern Territory. No team in the South Island of New Zealand.
Is that the bits where anyone lives, or is that just on that blank bit?
No, people do live in
Perth
and Adelaide. Not very many in Darwin. But
Well,
Tasmania.
my knowledge of Australia.
Launceston doesn't have a huge rugby league
Launceston.
following.
No, it doesn't. That's
Well,
true.
they've got cricket ground in Perth, haven't they? Yeah.
But there's a few people in the South Island who New Zealand.
absolutely.
You'd think Christchurch, or
But,
maybe Wellington. Even.
Again, talking of plans for the sport, what is the plan to open up America? It could well be that taking an NRL game is a strategically wise decision.
We took at a
But
State
how
of
do-
Origin game
how
in
do
the
we follow
80s.
it up?
Phil,
Yeah,
what
exactly.
happened?
Well, a test match in Denver. And
Yeah,
Warrington
and didn't Warrington wasn't big in the
Milwaukee.
80s? Yeah, I mean, one-off
Early
games
90s.
might create a bit of buzz and maybe make a bit of money, but yeah,
You
so
know,
what is the plan?
there is no plan, Phil. Come
well, they've had another
on. we know this, Phil.
another American Football League has kicked off last week to fanfare of some degree in America, but it's second tier, third tier American football.
In saying that, though, like it's not an easy place to crack.
No,
It took football decades, rugby
I
unions
just
having
think-
some success but failed
No,
a couple of times.
I just think we've
Yeah.
got a product that is ideally suited to that market.
We don't
If-
have the money,
to market it.
and we
We
don't
don't.
have the nous or
And
the
we
leaders
don't, and we don't have the player base
or the collective will.
to suddenly say
No.
some guys who are coming to the end of a very illustrious career can go over and play at a high standard, which would get people interested,
But I
which
think
is what you want.
I think the Toronto episode showed there's not the collective will
No,
to
there isn't.
support it across the game
There isn't.
either. Well, at least in this hemisphere.
No.
Um,
Well, I don't think there is between the hemispheres.
No,
because
no,
I
definitely.
think, whatever we might think of the merit of our competition over here, it is so looked down upon by the NRL and the ARLC that they won't work with us because they don't feel we can offer anything.
And also I don't know how big an element in this, the game going, I think it's the opening round, isn't it? Going to America, but it's Manly and South Sydney. South Sydney, who are owned by a Hollywood actor.
Yep.
Manly, who are owned by a businessman who lives in New York, an
And,
Australian
and
businessman.
have another Hollywood actor.
yeah,
as their number one fan.
in Hugh Jackman. Yeah. So, I mean
It's a money spinner for those two clubs as opposed to a development tool for the sport of rugby league.
Where are our super famous people supporting our clubs? Oh, we've got
Well,
Wayne Rooney.
We're still waiting to hear what's happening with the NARL as well, aren't we? It's
And
not like
the
you can
Euro
tap in,
13.
It's not like you can
Next.
tap into something that's on the ground. And
The problem is, and it's. I read an article about British basketball last week
in the Guardian,
in the Guardian.
I read that. It was a very good piece.
And I would come from the perspective as, I mean, it's interesting what gets funded and what doesn't in this country, isn't it? And you'd say
Rowing.
there are more. Well, there you go. I mean, I don't need to go any further, do I? I mean, what
Rackets.
a load of crap the boat races, and that's put on prime time television, and it shouldn't be anywhere near it. Basketball's obviously popular amongst a certain section of people, which obviously don't get the money from the sports council people or whatever they're called these days, but the likes of rowing and tennis and whatever does. Basketball as a spectator sport in this country will never hit a height that people think it should, because it can be easily compared to the product in America, which is far
The
superior.
NBA comes to London and they sell out, much like the NFL does the same.
Now the NRL.
So the NRL should probably come and
yeah,
The NRL is better than the Super League, we know that.
Yeah.
But the Super League's not terrible.
no.
So
No,
it's,
there's only two competitions
I'm not
in the
saying,
world.
I'm not saying people who play British basketball are terrible, but they're not,
Well, I mean, if you were going to rate it in basketball leagues, it's probably not in the top 10, not even maybe the top 15. So that's the reality, Rich. You are.
It's easier to pick up basketball and rowing, isn't it? I can go down my local park and play basketball. I can't go.
But the thing is, and this ties into what Phil was saying earlier about the Challenge Cup and back in the day in Cumbria, we're in a globalised world.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch the NBA every day. I remember growing up in the 90s, the Michael Jordan era basketball was massive.
Was that the
in
80s?
Australia. No, that was when he came out of retirement. That was 1990.
After you played baseball for a bit, yeah.
It was Space Jam, the original, not the crappy LeBron version. That was huge, but you could only watch it, half an hour. Now you can watch every game,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing in Australia. You
Which
can
is
watch
great,
Premier
'cause-
League football, but you're not necessarily going to go down and watch your local team.
But of course,
So
our friends in Toronto want to watch the Super League highlights on Twitter, can't, because they're geo-blocked by the broadcaster. But
That's
of course,
a different-
NBA,
that's
I know
different.
it's different, but just mix everything into one
Yeah.
rant about something.
But I think that that takes it away, because sorry Phil, when you were growing up, you couldn't watch the Winfield Cup or You couldn't watch every NRL game on.
You couldn't
on,
watch live football.
Yeah, you couldn't. You probably,
had to
there
wait
wasn't many
until
games
match
on
of the day on
live,
Saturday
live
night.
English Rugby League, was it? Yeah.
No, but I mean soccer, which is the national
Exactly.
passion.
Yeah.
You could not watch a live game.
Yeah.
You could watch some highlights on a Saturday night, and that was it.
Now you can be in
Now,
Singapore or Hong Kong.
yeah.
You can watch every Premier League game. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Championship game, and some League One games. It's like you are saturated with.
But what that means is the big clubs get bigger.
Yep.
And their audiences are now global, which makes them more money. So the gap between the top and the bottom is even
But
bigger.
then you have to tailor your sport to the fact that that is how it is, not
Or
how
you
you would
create a
like it
Super
to
League.
be. But then that again disenfranchises
Yes, yeah.
the bulk of the teams below it.
It does, and the fans.
Scunthorpe United, who have just been relegated,
They have.
Have they?
and you're not going to fashion the Champions League around the chance that they might be in it someday.
You just defended Kevin Keegan
the whole dynamic
and
changes.
Ian Botham in one comment, Phil. That's outrageous. Leave Beefy alone.
The trade envoy to Australia.
One of the greats.
Lord Botham plugging that
One
thing
of
on
the
the telly that's going to sort his feet out. He's still walking with elephants. Does he still do it anymore? He's not. Is he on Twitter anymore? I don't know. Is he still? Not after that. No. After his middle stump incident. Do you not see
I
it?
don't know what he's talking
He did
about. We've segued very far.
The middle stump
Yeah.
incident. Is that a euphemism for something?
It is a euphemism
Right.
for something.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to mention a rugby league player who did the same, but I'm not going to do that. Elsewhere, Gary's been shopping in Poundland again, says JMS. Well, these have made the decisions they have in recent years. You can't attract top coaches or players to the club. They've got no marquee players. They've got Blake Austin and Aiden Caesar and some other people. Andy says, has the two marquee era been for Leeds and White? Both teams were successful pre the marquee era. Coincidence? Carson says it's Kukash's revenge. Not at the time, but
I know some people suffering from that at the moment.
I think the disparity is also the salary caps. You know, you can earn as a middle rung NRL player, you can earn probably as much as the marquee players on. You know, it's not like the early 2000s where you get your Gidleys and your Jamie Lyons and etc.
At least Leeds versus Derby will be back in. Leeds versus Bradford will be back in 2023. They're not getting relegated. Leeds are not going to get relegated. So Super League happened
Twice.
I know I've had to tick the teams who won on Monday, but who were the big winners then over Easter? Who was saying had the best Easter?
Not
who had the
Leeds.
worst Easter? Not
Anybody
Leeds.
who won twice, because it's just
St Helens,
okay.
Castleford Tigers.
Castleford. It is just. I mean, I don't think if any of us were being honest, any of the games on Monday, you would put on a highlight video.
Can I just make a small point? Was it Darryl Clark's try?
Yes.
Was it 70 metres or 80? Is
Well,
that
I don't know
not
if
the worst?
I don't know if it was that far, but
No.
there is a picture of
Where they're all stood their
their entire whole team, apart from Jake Connor, who is just realising what his teammates are about to do.
I don't think I've
Turning
seen
their
a
back.
worse display from an entire 13 at a professional
Well, did you
level
see
ever.
Paul McShane's try against Wakefield?
Yes, I did, but that was one player. That was bad. I think that was Liam Hood, wasn't it?
There were three people looking around going,
But that was, I mean, that's kind of understandable in the sense that, you know, he was looking around, but a whole team on a pet like, I'm sorry,
they still won.
they won the game. Yeah, they won the game, so I guess it doesn't matter. But that was, I mean, I know it's not comedy, but that was one of the funniest thing I've seen in a long time.
so is there a lot of point talking about Monday's games on the basis of the fact that quality was so compromised? My issue is this Friday's games.
Which, as you said in the history of this programme every year, it's always the third round that is the worst because you've got the compound of two.
And I
games.
think the one after as well. Yeah.
In some respects, I have absolute admiration for Christian Wolff and what he's doing this week, what he's said about why he's doing it. I think in some ways it's unfair on Castleford because they would hope that Saints would come with all of their star name players.
I think they're quite happy.
It's unfair on Sky because they're covering that game.
They should be covering the game at Leeds and Toulouse. To be fair, that's
Well,
much
the
more
new coach
interesting
hasn't turned
game.
up in the.
But they
And they usually play every Leeds game anyway.
But they picked that in advance, haven't they? And Castleford Saints has been a good game for them in previous years.
Yeah, but not this year.
But I just think Easter's come home to roost this weekend.
Chickens. No, I thought you were obviously there headingly on Thursday, but the way Leeds deserved to win against Huddersfield and somehow conceded 2 tries in 2 minutes.
But then
crazy.
I would also say that their attitude in the Golden Point extra time period was actually a positive.
Well, they were much better. They were much better.
Because having conceded 2 tries at the end of the game, you would have thought their heads would have been so far down that they wouldn't have got themselves up even for the first set of 6. They actually were the closest to winning it, even in Golden Point extra time.
But another injury to Jack Walker.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I just you were at Huddersfield on Monday for what should have been the game of the round between 2 teams in the top 3. You said it's a tough watch.
It was a very grinding game. Yes, yeah.
But it's a tough watch.
It was one for the purists.
I went to Castleford, and again, close game. Television will always revel in a close game. The whole Jack Sinfield story, which I understand why television would revel in. But as a game, just a really tough watch. Those 9,000 people that were there would have turned up whenever you played that game. It doesn't have to be Easter Monday. When Castle play Leeds, that's one of their big home games of the season. It doesn't have to be Easter. Huddersfield plays St Helens is a big game. Play it when you can get the best out of that game. I just don't know if there's any merit in reviewing what we've seen.
The fixture computer wasn't very kind to Cass, was it? Giving them two rivals over.
But the other thing is, how is it fair now as well? If we have 2 teams from France that somebody has got to play on a Thursday and then, or Friday as it turned out for Hull KR, because that's when the derby was, to go through all the emotion of a derby game and then get on a plane and fly out. So the fact that they won was incredible merit to Hull KR, and were 18-4 down and still came back. But we shouldn't be asking people to do this.
No, definitely. Couldn't agree more.
The French derby on Monday, Thursday should have been a real standalone event. The first one we've ever had. No other games played on that Thursday. Sky down there. Let's talk about the impact it's going to have for French Rugby League. Then play Wigan Saints and maybe Hull KR morning and afternoon on Good Friday. Play all the games.
Why have we gone back to this playing 4 games at the same time? Palaver. I mean, you were there at Headingley. I was there at Headingley. We would have watched the derby. We couldn't watch the derby because we only have a certain amount of eyes.
History was being made. You want to watch
that.
But
Friday was great. There was a 12:30 game and there was the 3 o'clock game.
Fantastic.
But again, that goes back to the argument of spreading the games over the weekend, doesn't it? There's no reason not to.
But you are hurting your own TV viewers. Figures. Sorry.
You could have had a game on Thursday, 2 games Friday as usual.
You had a game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Game on Sunday. Game
2
on
games
Monday
or whatever.
Or 2 games staggered over Monday. Yeah.
Fitting the championship wherever. I know that seems a bit harsh, but the Super League is the top product. So
and then you could then go back to having a game this Thursday as opposed to
Because people moan about the Thursday games, but when they're not there, you do notice that they're not there.
It's essentially a TV.
Yeah.
But it works.
Absolutely.
That's what I mean. As sad as probably people don't want to admit it, we are content for a TV company.
Well, it would be very interesting to see.
They're not paying 26 million.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what figures Channel 4 get, because they're moving from Saturday to Sunday this week.
I've not seen that game promoted in any way, shape, or form.
Which is difficult when there are months
between games. I think
it's
that's
difficult that they've got a game that you would say on paper one team is heavy favourites to beat the other. So it's hard to build up like they have with a couple of the other games when the competition's fresh and there's no real form line. The form line would say Wigan should beat Salford.
Jay Fielder score 58 tries.
And if he doesn't, then the French.
Yeah.
But it'd be very interesting to see what kind of an audience they get for a Sunday lunchtime game. And again, if it was me, Channel 4 game should always be 12:30 on a Saturday. All of their 10 games this year should be in the same time slot.
Because then everyone knows. No one is.
You're building a brand now.
Is there anything from the games that you want to mention from the weekend?
Jack Sinfield made his debut. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen. I've heard about it. I obviously wasn't at the game and was watching another game, so I haven't seen it. How did he play, because it was interesting on the Thursday night at Headingley
Yeah.
before Leeds and Huddersfield. It was the winning drop goal, didn't he, in the reserves against Wigan?
Yeah, the reserves were 18-0 down, and he orchestrated the 23-22 win, including
Must have some good
the winning
DNA.
drop goal. How did he play? Admirably, in the sense that Blake Austin was there to protect him a little bit on his debut, and he'd gone within 6 minutes with a cut head and failed HIA. So more was asked of Sinfield. So I think defensively, you'd have to admire a kid who clearly is still developing. A lot of traffic run at him, nowhere really to hide, didn't shirk. Put in a try assist with a kick that, to be fair, Jake Maymo fumbled, but the kick was accurate.
Still counts.
It was accurate. It was where it needed to be. No.
Should the laws or the rules be changed that you have to be 18 to debut first team? Obviously, they changed that in the NRL.
Because in the
Just think they've got so much more talent over there. Here
I think it's more of a player welfare issue, because if you're a 17-year-old kid who's 72
who
kilos
hasn't
running
grown.
wet,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you've got
I think
120
I think
kilogram Pacific Islanders running at you.
It does depend what position you play in. Joseph Suwali looks like a man even at the age of 16. So
I mean, Jack Sinfield looks very slightly built, and obviously
but he
got
plays
a lot
in
of
a position where
he's obviously tough and mentally
very
strong,
so
much like his father.
Yep. No, I think he'll make his home debut this Friday against Toulouse. Be really interesting to see what the crowd will clearly get behind him. But it'd be interesting to see what that weight of expectation is week on week. He's wearing the same number that his father wore when he made his debut, so we'll see. You would wish nothing but success for somebody like that, because it's great for the game as a whole, isn't it? If you can have sons and talented youngsters come through and inherit the mantle of their fathers. But
no, he's not gone to Leicester or something.
we'll see.
I was lucky to see the Scott Fulton at Manly, so I always thank my lucky stars.
Exactly.
We were trying to think of
What's the game
of
we've been playing?
great players who have exceeded the...
Geordie Croft.
Yeah, that's one of the examples. And there aren't many.
I think Pele's son was a goalkeeper. But
They're exceptions, aren't they, rather than the rule?
yeah, I think there is a couple, isn't there? But not... Yeah.
Johnny Bairstow, probably just starting to exceed his dad, who was a great player.
Ben Stokes, but kind of different sports.
So, but it's rare. The vast majority. I think there'll be a list in the Leeds programme on Friday of fathers and sons who played for the club. I think we got up to about 9, and I think with the greatest respect to virtually all of the sons, they don't match up to their fathers. There's only a couple you could say. You could debate whether Kevin Dick was a better player than Alec Dick, but there aren't many. Even the great Bev Risman, he's not Gus Risman. So it's a hell of an onus on Jack Sinfield. It makes you feel old to watch it, but it's potentially a great story for the sport. I was there with your good friend and colleague, Mr. Ross Heppenstall,
A friend of mine.
But the sports desk of the Times was ringing up before the game saying, "Can you file some words about?"
The son of a
Jackson?"
rugby union coach is.
No, but they'd heard the name Sinfield.
No, of course.
That bloke who did those marathons.
Yeah, I think the marathon, the charity
That's what
work,
he's
which is
famous for.
unbelievable.
But
he's a national
so
celebrity
Jack
in that.
Sinfield already has a cachet for the sport,
definitely.
where a national sports editor is ringing up saying, "Will you file some copy about it?"
And I think it is an interesting.
We can't turn that
It
down.
is an interesting story, when you talk
Yeah.
about that kind of parental link and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Just
So
wait.
I wish him well.
Just wait for next month's 4020, which has the big expose about how rugby league is completely ignored in certain media circles. Stay tuned for that next month. I've done the research and everything. Oh, can we put a table in? Can we put tables? I don't know.
I'm sure we can design something.
But just wait, because it's a damning indictment on where rugby league is. Carson says, former player, insert name here, says, if he's good enough, he's old enough. Oh. Tom says, Tim McGraw ended up a bigger star than Tug McGraw. So there you go, there's one for you.
Sparkles McGraw.
We mentioned him both of them earlier. I think I'm sorry, 3 sports. Formerly, he's got heritage in Rodney. How many games did he play for?
Andy Farrell and
Owen Farrell. No, he can't be as good as his dad. You know,
the Fords.
But what we're looking for are exceptions, not rules. So you've got that double pressure of carrying the name as well and the reputation, as well as what you need to be a professional sports person, which is something pretty special anyway.
So usually that kind of nepotism only happens in broadcasting. Richard Dimbleby, David Dimbleby, Jonathan Dimbleby. All the people on national radio who are the offspring of other people who've been, famous as
Don't
something
you
else.
dare say Martha Kellner.
No, she's good. And as his brother, because I work with him. So, big up Dave. Loves his golf.
I think the championship only having 1 game over Easter, and again, a lot of those being rival round games, a lot of those attendances being high, if they do it, why doesn't the top division do it? It's false economy.
I used to work with Martha. I keep forgetting that I used to work with.
Did you?
Yeah.
Martha.
That was Super League. Some stuff happened. Championship, Batley beat Dewsbury, so bragging rights to them. Halifax beat Bradford, as we mentioned. Fev hammered Barrow. Sheffield beat London. Lee beat Widnes, and they've just sent Kieran Dixon there. York beat Newcastle in League One. Doncaster beat Cornwall. 943, I guess, isn't a bad crowd. Although I don't know how many people there to watch Sheffield Eagles, because I think they played after.
Yeah,
They did.
Hunslet lost to Keighley. That was late on. 20 points to 16. Midlands beat London.
Gary
Scholars 50-28.
Schofield hosting.
I saw that, yeah. No. Rochdale beat Oldham in the big, what's it, the M something derby, IA something derby.
M60.
And Swinton lost in rivals round to North Wales.
Which
13-6.
looked like a really good game at the top of League One.
And North Wales are top. They are unbeaten. They and Featherstone are the only unbeaten teams left in the men's game. Just in case someone says otherwise. Is there anything else to mention? I mean, there's games this week, but as you say, it's
LDRL's back.
LGRL's back. That got lots of publicity.
Which is brilliant.
There's a PDRL World Cup, and no one seems to know what's going on with PD. It just seems to. It seems to be.
It's festivals.
Pushed
away. Well, because they brought in classification, so.
I need to go to a wheelchair game soon. But I was trying to look for the fixtures, and I can't remember. The next one's not until months away or something. At the home Leeds, so it's not, because I'm not going.
Leeds? It's not that far.
I'm going next to the Leeds Riders netball team are playing in Hull. That can't, people in Hull, they can't. They're not going to be shouting Leeds, are they? Come on now.
Well, certainly not going to be shouting Rhinos. That's
Rhinos. It's like the Saracens or something. Unless you know anything else, John. I don't think.
A few things, but
nothing that
sometimes.
Nothing that you can.
I don't think Brad Drew's going to Hull car.
Brad Drew.
Brad Drew.
Sorry, not Brad Drew.
Former Wakefield
Brad
Drew.
Dwyer. Brad Dwyer.
To replace Matt Parcell?
I don't think so, but you never know.
But Matt Parcell leaving Hull Town?
I don't think it's been decided, but looks.
I think Tony Smith departing will also
looks likely
mean that some players will.
An exodus. Let's call it an exodus.
Not an exodus, but I think they've got some.
Clickbaiting.
There's some players who are coming off contract who will say, if Tony ain't going to be there, I might try somewhere else.
There definitely seems to be a lot of movement in the transfer market at the
May
moment.
the 1st, isn't it? That.
Well, as you know, Phil, the movement generally happens well before you're actually allowed
May
to
the
do any
1st
movement.
is the official date for.
Yeah, I think.
Zach Hardegger going to play for Wigan again?
Well, there seems to be some rumours that
where would he go at this stage?
They've been denied,
Featherstone
at least to me.
They don't have fullbacks yet.
But in terms of salary cap,
yeah,
would be able to afford
Lee or Featherstone really makes sense. I mean,
Toulouse.
Well, they would have space on their salary cap. I don't know their ownership structure.
They need a fullback.
Yeah.
To replace.
But again, as I said about culture and team dynamics.
But it's
and
also
how many second chances?
But it's also if he struggled to get
is
to
he
training.
as good, but is he as good as
doesn't matter.
he once was?
Doesn't matter.
If he struggled to get to training from Pontefract to Wigan, how is he going to get to Toulouse?
It's still that reputation thing. If you were good once, you're always good until you retire.
No, I think he is a talent, and I'd love for him to fulfil his talent for longer. But it seems that he's on the outer at Wigan. He's almost the victim of Jyfield and Bevan French coming into the team. It's like, we can't find a space for you anymore. Plus, clearly he was dropped for an internal disciplinary issue, which he's led to believe is perhaps being late for training.
So it won't be like a Warrington then, because that's too far.
Is he on the outer, do you think?
Because they've got the elastics on the Warrington. Well, if you come out and if you wanted to keep someone, you can easily say, "Oh, he's got a groin strain" or something. I mean, it's great of Wigan being honest and stuff, but you don't have to say that, do you? I'm being curt tonight, apparently, says Tom.
Kurt who?
I don't know.
Kurt Cobain.
Oh, it says on the t-shirt.
Captain Kirk?
Yeah. And Teddy says he's not Kurt. That's the bit harsh. Because he's not a cult, this programme. There are some cults in Rugby League, you know, but I can't talk about them on air. So I have to talk about it
Leave
later.
the Scientologists
Possibly
alone.
misheard.
Yeah. Well, boy, some of the... we can't tell you everything. You know, it's the problem. I don't really know anything. I mean, couldn't try, you know. What are we looking forward to then this weekend as we disappear off into the ether? Because obviously you said everything's going to be rubbish.
No, I don't think we quite tried to sell it that way. We just said that the standard may be compromised because of the schedule, but clearly Leeds to lose is a really intriguing game.
Two very bad teams. Should be great.
No, intriguing, I didn't say it'd be great. Nobody made a claim for it to be great. I think Bradford-Featherstone's a really interesting game on Monday.
I haven't got Premier though, so I can't watch it.
If Toulouse win on
Yes.
Friday, what does that say? Where do Leeds go from there?
Well, it says that a third of the season's gone and
Italy
nothing
to
is
Christ.
decided.
That's all it says.
Yeah.
Dear.
Spoken like a true rhino.
But it is only a third of the season. It's 9 of 27 games. Leeds have got more players to come back in that will make a difference and a new coach. So all it says is Toulouse come off the bottom of the table.
Do you think the likes of Wakefield and Salford will sitting a bit nervously at the moment?
Well, we're rubbish now, Wakefield. Like, we won 4 games in a row, but now, you know, everyone's crap. Willie out.
It's
Rubbish.
down to squad depth.
No.
Carter out as well, apparently.
What? Oh. I mean, even I'm not saying that. He got rid of me.
It's down to squad depth, and that's why Easter can be such a cruel area. I would worry a little bit for Salford on the basis of the fact that by having no reserve grade, by having an academy structure which is at college level at the moment rather than in the main competition, by having not a huge amount of depth in their first team squad, that this is a period of the season that really can find you out if you get injury. There's some incredibly talented players at Salford, there is no doubt about it, but how many will they be able to get on the pitch at any one time? So yeah, Salford, Wakefield, there could be another club that goes on a losing run that gets
Warrington.
pulled into. Well, it's not
No,
it's
they've
not
only
looking,
won-
it's
was
not
it-
looking
is it
great. Is
1
it 1 out
from
of
7?
6 or 7?
Yeah.
It's not looking great. But again, they have the players to turn that around.
Well, that really. I mean, I don't have the answer for Warrington's Eels, but it is very strange because if you look at their squad, while they might be somewhat light perhaps in the front row and their recruitment's perhaps been underwhelming, we've got far too many good players there who
I think,
at their best,
again,
they're a top 4
part of the
team.
issue with that might be the number of players that are out of contract at the end of the season, that uncertainty that hangs around.
I think if you were off contract and you were worried that would be an incentive to play better.
Unless you know that you're not included next year. And
Well,
you're
they won't all be.
and you're already negotiating come the May the 1st
Yeah.
deadline to play somewhere else.
Apparently the stream's gone rubbish, so we may as well give it.
Okay.
Because I think we've run out of things anyway. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else left to say, is there? Go subscribe to John's Patreon. If you don't, Steve Masco will try and sell you some more shirts. Has he got any more defunct teams in Australia who can sell kits for?
I don't know. I think he's just making them up.
I mean, if he can, I've got the design for the Pyongyang pylon shirt. If he wants to flog them, you know.
I'd buy a Pylon shirt.
I'd buy a Hunter Mariners shirt.
Hunter Mariners with the buttons on.
Terrible.
Go Graham Murray.
Disgrace of Newcastle.
Oh, Graham Murray.
I've been watching this thing on Sky called Frame, which is set in Newcastle. They've not mentioned the Knights once, so that's no good.
I've seen that.
Caelan Pong.
Actually, that's
staying for
is that-
5
is that-
years.
That's actually something we should mention. Caitlin Pong.
5 years.
Is he?
$5 million.
Yeah. And his father essentially seems to be like they've given him a job at the club. I mean, in your opinion,
He's a
Phil,
cleaner. It's like players' wives in the early
it's
2000s.
very
Is
unusual.
Is that Anton? Is it Anton?
I can't remember his
okay.
first name, but he's got to be probably the most overrated player in rugby league.
Got a lot to do I mean,
No, but I'm being honest here. He's a talented player and he's very skillful, but what has he done in his career apart from being injured a lot? And when Nathan Brown got sacked, said he was going to go and have a milkshake. He's not probably even in the top 5 fullbacks in the NRL.
no. He's not even Reece Walsh at the moment.
Reece Walsh has got nicer eyes, very good-looking rooster. It's very to me, and as someone
it's
who
Newcastle putting a lot of eggs in one basket.
well, as someone who grew up in Newcastle and I think knows the Knights relatively well, it just seems to me, post Andrew Johns, they had a long period of decline and a very brief resurgence under Wayne Bennett, and then more decline, and they were looking for a franchise player, and they've put a lot of money into Ponga, but even more money to retain him. But is he that good? He's not Andrew Johns.
But I'm also not sure you can build a side around a fullback.
Well, that's I mean, Manly might.
If you're going to put
but
if you're going to put £5 million into one player, you would want it to be a hooker or a halfback.
Well, it's not £5 million per season, but yeah, I know.
But it's a big investment over the next 5 years.
But there will be, I mean, I think James Tedesco would probably be on similar. Tommy Turbo would be on similar, but they're better players than him. Latrell Mitchell is a better player than him. You would say Ryan Papenhuyzen is a better player.
Oh
than him.
yes, we love Ryan and his mullet.
I mean, you arguably might, Reece Walsh, AJ Brimson.
Yep.
I mean, Dylan Edwards has won a grand final.
It's at least half the teams you just mentioned.
Yeah, I just think he is very overrated, and he's used the Redcliffe situation.
I think they
manipulated it to get more money, which is great. Which is great for him. But
absolutely.
The Knights need to start, winning games and making the top 4 regularly because, it's a very odd one, and obviously the role with his father. I can't remember. It's kind of almost an NFL, NBA style situation that you have your father kind of negotiating for you, and then they've given him a job at the club to kind of, sweeten the deal.
He's not like one of those mad tennis dads. He's not
going to. There's an element of that. Yeah. I mean, Richard Williams, Mary Peace's dad, I think, was a bit of another. It is strange, but I'm sure Newcastle are happy that they've kept him.
Yeah.
I don't think Wayne Bennett and the Dolphins.
I don't think he's going to lose any sleep. I think they may have dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
Andy Murray better than Judy.
Well, they are literally signing. They are literally signing half of the Melbourne Storm, the Dolphins. Their forward pack, and maybe Cameron Munster. So, yeah.
So I'd spend $5 million on him, over 5 years.
Andy says you could build a team around Jonathan Davis, and he was a fullback. He's not playing that now. Did he play fullback in Rugby League much?
How many titles did he win?
He got smashed by Mal Meninga at Old Trafford for weakness. I'm
not sure that fullback is one of the spine positions.
Yes.
But I think if you've got a bulk of money over 5 years, that has to be half a hooker.
Yeah.
But
I think you want to spread it, don't you, over your 7, your 1, and your 9.
That's a lot of money to be putting into a fullback.
Max Jowett, he's better than Bogdan.
Zach Hardacre.
Zach Hardacre. Could go back to Penrith.
Zach Hardacre.
Yeah. Apparently we're back online, but
back.
I've run out of energy now, so I don't know.
It's tomorrow.
Got to get up in the morning. I've got an Iceland delivery. Rohan Smith doing a press conference. I've got to speak to James Haskell. I'm going to ask him for a Union player. What am I going to ask him?
Anthony Seibold.
That's all I'm going to ask him about.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to, because it's for a local radio station, because he's on a podcast that's successful.
Working with John Clark,
He's on a podcast that's successful. There's something you could ask him about that.
They're the number one podcast, you say. So
ask him.
I can piggyback off
How
this.
do we become?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask him. I'm going to say, do you like Rugby League? That kind of thing. I'm going to put it on our video thing as well. So
excellent.
If you want to watch a
poor, he would have gone all right in the second row.
It's been on I'm a Celebrity. Scully's not been on that.
Has he heard of Gary Scott? No, no.
He's married to someone who used to present Rugby League on the telly.
Oh, Gary
Well, no,
Schofield.
he's married to someone who's the daughter of someone who used to play
Oh,
rugby league
sorry.
on the telly.
I thought you meant Gary Schofield.
Which mainly used to do the rugby league, didn't he? On,
He did.
On Granada.
He did.
Well, whatever happened to him now is well, I don't want to say. That's not. Oh, it's all these people. Tom, go away. I love this. I love it. I love it when we're live. It's great. Thank you very much for watching. John will be back, no doubt, soon at some point in the future. Phil's always here. Although noticeably last week when it was just me and John, viewing figures and listening figures plummeted. So Phil's the big.
Was that my mum and dad didn't?
Yeah. Phil's the big draw around here. We know where our bread is buttered. We'll see you next week. I don't know exactly when next week, but we'll be back next week for more excitement in the world of rugby league. Hopefully, no one else quits halfway through a program. But we'll see what happens. I'll buy the magazine. Buy it now.